Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
The world was watching in 1972 as 11 Israeli athletes were murdered at the Munich Olympics. This is the story of what podcasted next.
Wait, what? Is that the tagline?
That's the tagline for the movie.
Great tagline. Wow, what a somber beginning.
Yeah, I mean, that's
hey, everybody, I'm David Sims.
My name's Griffin Newman.
All right.
This is
we
a
podcast
called Blank Check with Griffin and David.
Yeah.
This is a show. We're hashtag the two friends. That's very important. I almost forgot that. We're two friends. We host a podcast together. That's our competitive advantage. It's unique.
Yeah. That's the secret we cracked.
Yes.
I'm looking at quotes from Munich.
That's
now.
proprietary. But we talk about movies on the show. We like directors and filmographies and looking at the context of what happens when someone has a massive success early on. They become a brand and they get a series of blank checks.
Yeah, it's funny that you're doing this for Spielberg because it's not really the premise of the Spielberg podcast.
No. And sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce, baby.
Yeah.
And sometimes you
get
save
to
up
have a
enough
studio,
checks that you
right.
buy a studio. You found a studio with two other really rich guys and then you just make whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
This is a miniseries about Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
It's called Pod Me If You Cast.
Right.
And it's about Spielberg in the DreamWorks years. And this is kind of a midpoint. This is kind of a fulcrum film.
I guess so. It's a fulcrum film?
I'd say maybe this is like the halfway point of our miniseries.
Our miniseries? It probably is.
I'm not cracking the hard math on
you're,
this.
Yeah, it's about
Right?
there.
I think it's about there. And this is an interesting one because the film we're talking about today is Munich.
Yeah.
And
It's a 2-hour, 45-minute laugh riot.
it's long.
Yeah.
It's serious political Spielberg. One of the modes he goes into. It's
Sure,
Kushner
but it's-
Spielberg.
It's the beginning of
Right.
of that new genre.
Right. But the other thing with this film was this was part of this phenomenon that we keep on talking about when Spielberg tried to do a 2 for a year.
Yeah, or 3 and 2. I call it a 3 and 2. 3 and 2.
Why you call it 3?
Because it's, Lost World, Amistad, Saving Private Ryan. Three movies in 2 years. And then
Interesting.
AI, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can. And then this time it's Terminal, War of the Worlds, Munich. 3 and 2.
Interesting.
3 and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think he keeps on gunning for this one specific year thing, which is
Like,
within
silly
1 year,
and serious,
can I
right?
make a huge blockbuster and a huge Oscar film? And this film is paired up with War of the Worlds in its year.
Mhm.
And they're interesting because both films are closer to the middle.
Yeah, they're both very, very grim.
Right. They're both very, very grim.
Yeah.
And Munich is pretty violent and actiony, not in like a
True.
cathartic popcorny way,
No.
but for an Oscar movie. And War of the Worlds was pretty grim and bleak for a popcorn movie.
Yeah, not much action. Mostly just people turning into clouds of dust.
And War of the Worlds made a lot of money,
Yeah.
but mixed response and wasn't the number one movie of the year.
Yeah.
And this movie got a bunch of Oscar nominations, but didn't win any.
And it's one of his least seen films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting film. We have a very exciting guest on the show today.
You're supposed to
about
talk before we introduce you, or interrupt us, or make some annoying comment.
I thought
or
you'd
laugh.
yell at me.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I'm a very good boy.
This is the most polite guest we've ever had on the show, perhaps. Usually people are jumping in, their hot takes, their cold takes.
The Redditors are going to make a politeness ranking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he'll be number 1.
Yeah. You know him from the AV Club
Back in the day.
back in the day when the two of you were bosom buddies.
Yeah,
We still are.
yeah, we are.
Yeah.
we're still really not as tight as you two, but really good friends.
I would say that we are.
Hey.
Hashtag really good friends.
Let's make it clear. I'm not trying to argue that David and I are best friends and that there isn't room for other friends. It's just an empirical fact that we are the two friends.
Right.
I'm not saying we're better friends than anyone else. I'm not saying our friendship is better than
But we
anyone
are
else's
friends.
friendship. We are friends, and there are two of us.
Yep.
That's a fact.
Can't argue with it.
Yeah.
And we're the only ones.
And the two of you might still be bosom
Okay, keep
buddies in
introducing
spirit, but
our-
you used to be suckling at the same bosom.
We did.
Is that what bosom buddies refers to? Is it's like
I think so.
I
I believe
assumed.
that if you think of the AV Club as a giant wolf,
yeah, right.
we
right.
once both had separate wolf teats.
Right,
Yeah.
we were like Romulus and
And
Remus.
now we have different wolves.
That's true. And your
Yeah.
new wolf is Vox,
Is
Vox.com.
Vox.
Yeah, it's less of a wolf and now it's a
Vox.
Oh, it doesn't. I was going to make a Fox joke. I don't know what.
Yeah. Remember how at the end of every episode of Bosom Buddies, Peter Scolari and Tom Hanks would like recount what happened in their day while sucking at the breast of a wolf?
Yes, of course I do.
Todd
what
Vanderwolf
made it-
is our guest today.
Made it one of the biggest hits of the 80s.
Man, one of the biggest hits. Todd, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be
Hi,
here.
Todd.
It's
I've
nice
been
to
on
have you
your
on the show.
podcast many times.
You have.
Is it dormant? I suppose it's dormant.
It's
podcast.
dormant. Yeah. I mean, Libby and I keep thinking we're going to relaunch it. It's called TV on the Internet.
Mhm.
It's still on the Internet, and you can still find it.
And it's still about TV.
Yeah, it's
For the large
still
part.
about TV. But yeah, it's dormant now because Libby works for a print publication.
And so they're not. They're yeah. Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
not
they're
into it.
weird about the Internet.
Right,
So
right,
yeah.
What was I going to say? Well, you're here to talk about movies.
I am here. to talk about
And
movies.
you're in town.
I am.
You're from the City of Angels.
Yes.
La La Land,
Hmm?
which
Yeah.
at this point is probably won Best Picture. This episode won't post for a long time.
At this
Todd.
point, everybody's fucking sick of that.
There's been a
movie.
backlash. There's been
Oh.
a backlash to the backlash.
Can we do this actually?
Oh, you want to?
I'm gonna say Moonlight.
This will probably post in like March.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to say Moonlight. You say La La Land, and let's not talk
okay,
about it for
right.
the rest of the episode, but let's just call our pick our bets. right now.
You're calling a shot. You're saying
I'm calling
Moonlight's
a shot.
Gonna...
I'm saying Moonlight. You're saying La La Land. Todd, what do you think?
I'll say La La Land as well. I don't
Interesting.
think Moonlight has the juice. I
No.
just don't.
I mean, we like the movie.
Mhm.
To be clear.
Yeah,
But,
I'm once again. I mean, look, I'm on the record as having Moonlight as my movie of the year. I sense a surge coming in like January.
well,
But right
If
now
you're
we're
right,
recording in
this
December.
is gonna look hot.
That's what I'm saying. That's
Yeah,
why
yeah.
I want to put the chips on Moonlight right now because I'm sensing a January, February
But this
surge.
is very low stakes because, like,
Who fucking cares?
yeah, like in March, people will just be like, "Oh, well, he was wrong." You know?
Yeah, right. Whatever.
Or they might be like, we must join the resistance.
Yeah.
Like, Oscars don't matter anymore. Who cares what happened at the last Oscars? Anyway, sorry.
I mean, if I was really
I don't mean to
courageous,
joke about whatever horrible shit might be happening in the future.
if I was really courageous, I'd put my bet on a movie that no one's talking about now, where if it loses or doesn't even get nominated, then it'll look like it was just a joke, and if it wins, I look like the single smartest man in
Exactly.
history.
It's the old Shakespearean love trick you pulled.
Right.
Anyway.
And for that reason, I'm predicting that Collateral Beauty takes home 7 Academy Awards.
Yeah, but all technical.
All technical.
The film is a work of technical precision. All right, so Todd,
Yes.
we've known each other a very long time.
Yes. Yes.
And we met as Oscar
We
prognosticators,
did,
actually,
did.
way back in the day.
On the message boards?
On
Yes.
the message, on the
On the
board.
message
I've heard
boards.
of these fabled boards.
Yeah,
many
we
a
used,
time.
we used to ride the boards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tread the boards.
Mounts-
Yeah.
yeah, tread the
Tread the
boards.
boards.
There you
Tread
go.
the boards, yeah.
And I remember 2005. What was the hot movie of what beat Munich? I don't even
Crash
Crash. It lost to Crash. Brokeback Mountain was
was the hot movie, was the
supposedly
one
gonna
to win, and
Yeah.
Crash.
What a weird Oscar race that was. Kind of a muted Oscar race now that I think about it.
It was, I recall, the first year in a long time that none of the movies had scored more than 100
100
million.
mil, yeah.
And that was like considered a big, like, shocker.
Well, Brokeback was the
But
highest
especially-
grossing, and it did 85, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, because you had some sleepers in there. You had
Yeah.
like Crash. Obviously, was a summer movie,
Yeah.
and like that had sort of built a little. Good Night and Good Luck, Capote. These like very, very glum movies.
It was a dour year.
Yeah, very washed
I mean,
out. It was the year of Katrina. It was the year
Right.
of like the post Bush. Yeah, 2005. So,
We were in the thick of it.
but what I remembered,
yeah.
is that Todd loved Munich.
I
at
love
the time.
Yeah.
And when the word Munich bubbled into my brain and Todd bubbled into my brain for our podcast, I was like, oh, Todd's got to talk about Munich.
Well, here's what I remember about the Munich thing, because I wasn't, I might have been lurking those boards. I was certainly checking Oscar sites all the time.
Oh, yeah?
I was deep in it. I remember there was a narrative because both War of the Worlds and Munich got pushed in production very quickly.
Right.
And Munich was like, he had been thinking about making it for a while, and then suddenly it was like, he's making it. It's a 3-month schedule. They're shooting it in the summer. It's coming out in the fall.
Yeah,
it was edited very
People
fast.
almost couldn't believe that it would actually make it out because it
Yeah.
seemed like, it seemed so hard to turn it around.
It got screened very late. I think they started production in like June. It was like kind of crazy. But that gave it this kind of like mystery box heat of like Spielberg's got this burning passion.
Sure, and of course he's making a historical, true story movie. Like, surely that'll be a big deal.
And this has been like his Oscar zone before. And I remember he had a cover story of Time magazine. And I forget what the headline was, but it was like, Steven's back, Steven Spielberg's secret important film or whatever it was. And the narrative I kept on seeing repeated in the press leading up to the release of the movie was like, yeah, I know Steven Spielberg has 2 Best Director trophies, but he wants 3. They kept on saying, like, yes, he's the most celebrated and successful director of his generation, but Howard Hawks had 4. You know, like, it was like that kind of thing, which was the least sympathetic narrative of all time.
Right.
But I remember people being like, he's going to drop this movie, it's going to come out late, and it's just going to fucking sweep. Because Brokeback at that point was, like, the one to beat. But you could
people
already...
were like, oh, it's so sad. It's, you know, like, is the Oscars, are they ready for a gay movie? Right?
Which
like
they ultimately proved they weren't. Right? And Crash at the time was like, oh, I guess it's going to get nominated.
It has its fans.
Right, but it didn't seem like it had the juice to win.
I mean, when you think about Crash, and when
Right.
you think about Crash,
yeah.
it is crazy that
Crash
it won
Bandicoot's
Best
also in the
Picture.
studio
It came
today.
out to bad reviews.
Crash came out to very mediocre reviews.
Yeah.
There were some people. I mean, Roger Ebert loved it.
Yes,
And
he
that-
did.
that
And
sort
he
of
stumped for it the
floated
whole
it.
time. It's true.
And
But New York Times and LA Times both
Yeah,
destroyed
they both,
it,
like,
right?
trashed-
And Variety and Hollywood
trashed
Reporter, I think.
Crash.
Yeah.
but it was
Crash.
sort of a surprise hit,
Yes.
and like it was like it's one of those LA things where people
Yeah.
get very excited about, like, here we
Ooh.
are on screen. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Well, it's that thing of like, oh my God, this movie speaks to what we're going through as a nation.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this movie speaks to what you're going through as a voting member of the
As a
Academy.
Hollywood executive
Yeah,
being asked to cast people in movies.
right.
Yeah, it was a movie. It was
As Tony Danza.
It was a movie about racism made to assuage rich white people that
Yes.
they weren't that racist, and like,
Right.
And it
which
didn't,
is the Academy.
didn't Spanglish come out the same year?
Year
or-
before,
2004.
2004.
It just there's a lot of real white guilt movies, like
Yeah.
written by like established Hollywood people who were obviously like wanted to wrestle with issues,
Yeah.
but like could not find the right track, you know, not find the right way to do it, and probably shouldn't have been the people
Well,
doing it in the first place.
But I think, yeah, post 9/11, in the middle of 2 wars, I think there was a lot of like looking in the mirror and
Yeah,
being
yeah.
like, are we the fucking bad guys?
Yeah,
But
sure.
ultimately going like, nah, not really, right? Like all those movies kind of went like, I don't know. And Munich's interesting because Munich really is like wrestling with that and has no neat answers.
Well, Munich's actually good,
Right.
as opposed to the other movies.
I
Yeah.
mean, this is kind of the start of a really like dark period of Oscar Best Picture winners.
Mhm,
Like, I mean, Crash is not an especially dark winner, but you get Departed, you've got No Country for Old Men,
Crash is pretty dark.
you've got Hurt Locker in there.
Yep.
So it's like this list of movies that are like, you know, we've abandoned the American ideal. Well, I guess we might as well die.
And it is
even
interesting. Yeah.
Slumdog Millionaire, which is the like feel good winner of 2008, like that's a dark movie,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and then The Artist, which is a feel-good movie, is also a fucking silent film. Like,
Yeah.
we have this run where for, like, a number of years, none of the Best Picture winners are traditional Best Picture movies.
Sure.
They're either a traditional Best Picture kind of
So when do you
narrative in
think-
very unconventional trappings.
When do you think it swings back around?
Well,
'Cause-
King's Speech in 2010, I think, is the outlier.
Sure, because
That's
is
a classic Best Picture
that
movie.
could have won in 1950. Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
and then I think it swings back.
I don't think it swung back because then you've got Birdman and Spotlight. I think it's still like
I think Argo's kind of a classic Best Picture winner.
12
I
Years
do.
a Slave isn't. at
No.
all.
no,
Yeah.
no. It's the thing. Like
No,
they've made
it's
some
changed a lot
wild
now.
choices.
They've made
Yeah.
some wild choices.
Assuming La La Land wins, it will be. But if Moonlight
Yes.
wins and
Yeah.
you're the genius, then
And I'm the genius. Or
What-
Collateral Beauty.
Yeah, you're hedging, but with collateral.
I'm hedging my
beauty.
bets. Yeah.
I love Oscar talk, guys. I don't know if
Me too.
It is funny though that because Munich. I feel like Todd, correct me if I'm wrong. That the reception of Munich was so muted and confused.
all over the place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all over the place that it was almost surprising when it did eventually. It did get
Yeah.
some Oscar. It got
Yeah.
nominated for picture, director, screenplay,
Yeah.
score. you know.
Everybody thought it was gonna. Everybody thought Spielberg would get nominated, but the movie would get edged out by Walk the Line.
Yes,
And
Walk
Right.
the
that did
Line
not
was the
happen.
big, and like, you know, it didn't get a lot of precursor, you know, like
No.
Golden Globe shit, you know, like so. Yeah, so
it was that weird arc of, it's going to be the surprise sweep of
Mm-hmm.
the whole season. Then people saw it and they were like, I don't know what the fuck this
they
is.
were like, forget it.
then they assumed
now,
it wasn't
like,
a contender.
Too weird.
Then it got a bunch of major nominations, didn't win any, and it just kind of like, well, the prize was being nominated.
Yeah.
No one ever viewed it. I think it was probably the least likely to win in the eyes of most people of the 5 films.
Yeah,
Yes.
although people did start beating some drum that was like, oh, you know, Jews. Like, you know, it is weird how sometimes people will just be like, you know what? When we're talking about the Oscars, we can just sort of say out loud that they like Jewish things. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and it can get a little uncomfortable. But no, but this movie struggled with the perception that it was anti-Israel
Yes,
as well.
Yeah.
Which is also kind of crazy.
and sort of a less prominent, but also from what was the American left at the time, which was
Mhm.
like very small, but sort of the counter criticism of it was too anti-Palestinian.
Of course,
And, like,
right. Which is, I mean, as they say, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
When you're getting criticized from all sides. I don't know.
In this
No, I
movie's
think
case,
so
I think. Yeah.
I think
so, too.
you know, this is a thing I like in movies, which is doesn't try to provide answers, try to ask you questions. It's like a fucking Rorschach test movie in a lot of ways, you know? The characters are... I remember, I think it was Manohla Dargis. It might have been in Ariel Scott. But the New York Times review of Munich when it came out, which was very positive, and was one of the more positive ones I remember reading at the immediate release.
I'm finding it.
The headline, I think, was something like, and you're probably going to now find
I have it right here.
correct it.
You want me to say it?
I think it's an action movie about the importance of talking.
An action film about the need to talk.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
Dargis.
Yeah, which I had not seen this movie until last night. I somehow didn't see it at the time.
Mhm.
But for years, for the last 10, 11 years, I kept that in mind. And watching this, it really kind of is the best description I've heard of the movie. That's what it is. It's this action movie that has no visceral pleasures to it
Sure, no.
because it's a bunch of people in a very conflicted
But
situation.
it's still Spielberg still makes that
Yeah.
action pop. That's
Sure.
that's the fun of him.
Sure.
You know, he gets you into it, and you're like, oh, this is, and then you immediately you're like, oh my god, though, like, why am I enjoying this?
Well,
right?
and it's that adage of like, you know, all war films are pro-war films. Like violence translates well to cinema.
oh, sure.
You know, it always kind of glorifies it to a degree because it's kinetic. But I think this movie works so hard to frame every action sequence, whether it's kind of a pot boiler tension sequence or
Sure,
an
or a
exciting
shootout,
cathartic
yeah.
or whatever it is. It's so conflicted with everything it's doing. I think it humanizes almost every single character you meet in the entire film, you know?
Yeah.
Even the characters who are speaking a foreign language without subtitles, you get a real strong sense of like that Greek guy in the movie.
Yeah.
Of like, this is a real person. You know, no one's just like collateral damage in this movie.
Yeah.
And it is. It's a movie
Collateral
about
Beauty, though.
Collateral Beauty, though. It is a movie about like conversations, and it reminds me a lot of The Conversation.
Interesting.
I think stylistically,
I had not watched it since it came out. On
Is that
DVD.
right? Yeah.
On
Oh,
DVD.
okay.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters. It was my favorite movie of that year, and then I saw it on DVD, and I put it aside because it's, you know, what are you going to make 2 hours and 44 minutes?
I almost bought it, and I was like, probably not going to rewatch it even if I buy
sometimes you're just in the mood
it.
for
I
a
just
nice
rented it.
a nice Thursday Munich.
And all of the scenes I remembered were like quiet conversations, like the conversation in the safe house with the Palestinian
Yes,
guy,
absolutely.
and the conversation with Papa. Like I remembered those scenes. I did not necessarily remember the visceral action sequences, which are there and are great. But
I remembered one of the. I remembered and I forgot how the hostage, you know, how the recreation of the Munich massacre is done, and I remembered that very viscerally. And then in the movie when it starts and you only see a second of it at the start, you know, I was like, oh, maybe did I like? I forgot that it's the dribs and drabs, and then of course I forgot. I remembered the sex scene.
everybody remembers,
and
that.
I remember the talk about the sex scene. That was the other thing. This movie has a very intense, strangely shot. We can talk about the sex scene later.
It's also kind of like the only full sex scene of his entire career.
It's true. Spielberg doesn't shoot a lot of sex,
Right? I was like running through my head, and I was like, "What's another Spielberg movie
with like an actually intimately shot sex scene?" I don't know.
And it's got two essentially.
Yeah.
And then you also have the whole thing with Marie-José Croze, which is just like even nudity you don't usually see in Spielberg movies, certainly not in a sexualized context.
And it's got Kieran Hins' dick.
You see Kieran Hines' shadowy penis.
You do. I mean,
That is a thing you see.
Got to talk about it.
You see a shadow cast tallywhacker of Kieran Hines.
No, but I just feel like the sex scene's right at the end. A lot of people came out and they were like, I don't know, it has this crazy sex scene that's really bad, like, and that suddenly became like the Munich problem.
Yeah, I tweeted about rewatching it, and like half the tweets
Really?
were, what about that sex scene? You know, it's such a weird, crazy notion. But I think that the reason Spielberg never has sex scenes is because when Spielberg has sex, he's imagining like a perfectly framed and shot action sequence. Like that's his experience. And
Wide, close. What? Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to. There must be a sex scene in this.
I mean, I was trying to think of one other one, you know? And then when I was trying to even just think of, like, what are other Spielberg movies with nudity, it's like Amistad and Schindler's List. Like, he only shows nudity when it's in, like, sort of, like, human atrocities, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I understand, like, the biggest nude scene in this
Catch Me
movie.
If You Can. That must have a sex scene in it. Doesn't
I
it?
feel like it has scenes where they're, like,
It has
jumping on
sexy
beds.
scenes. It has, like, underwear.
I remember that movie, and we will have rewatched it by the time this episode comes out, but we're recording out of order. I remember that movie cutting away before the sex ever
I think you're
happens,
right, yeah.
or showing people in bed right after sex who are mostly clothed.
You know what? So Spielberg's a bit of a prude, but hey, he shot a sex scene.
That was one of the reasons
Sweat
why
goes everywhere.
everyone was so surprised when he gave the Palme d'Or to Blue is the Warmest Color.
Yeah, he was like, and I loved it. He was like very,
Yeah, this movie's great.
Yeah. Good for him.
I mean, you're
yeah.
forgetting the big sex scene in Lincoln, like when he's just
Oh, that
like,
is true.
just walking around naked.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the stovepipe out over.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Look. Munich. It's a very serious film.
Yeah. War
Dark.
Horse 2 has a lot of sex scenes.
Munich.
Yeah.
So it's about the 1972 Munich Olympics.
Right, as I covered in my introduction to this podcast.
Right. And the Black September hostage situation that went wrong, and everyone died. Palestinian terrorist organization took hostages. I mean, Jesus Christ! Do I have to go through this?
Bad scene.
It was a bad time.
A real bad time.
It's a bad One Day in September, the Kevin McDonald documentary, which is very good and very, very intense. Has an interview with one of the Black September survivors. I think the only surviving member of the attack, maybe. It's a good movie if you guys ever want to check it out. Whatever happened to Kevin McDonald?
Didn't he do a YA movie with Saoirse Ronan that barely got released?
He's made a lot. Yeah, he did. He's made a lot of weird feature films since he switched over. To that side.
Very strange because he made like Last King of Scotland,
Right.
But then, he's made a lot. Holy cow!
Yeah, he keeps working.
State of Play, remember that?
Oh, right.
Remember The Eagle?
Yeah.
That's what people need.
Oh, the Channing Tatum.
Yeah,
Jimmy
like Channing
Belmont?
Tatum, Roman Caper. He made something called Marley. I was a Bob Marley documentary.
Right.
Okay. How I Live Now.
That's
the Saoirse Ronan one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently he worked on that James Franco time travel TV show.
Oh, he directed the 11.
Oh, that's right. He did do that. Yeah.
So you guys are blushing right now because he's a superstar.
Yeah, this guy's killing it. Yeah.
What a weird. Yeah. Okay. And he was in that. He made that submarine movie with Jude Law that like didn't come out in America.
Oh, that's the other Black Gold
Black Sea.
Black Sea. Yeah.
All right. I don't know why we're talking about Kevin McDonald. I mean, I know why, but
He's our next subject.
so, but I mean,
The least listened to miniseries in history.
Seriously. So we start with a brief recreation of the beginning of that hostage situation. We cut to the biggest star in the movie. You know her name. Tell me your name.
Ayad Zora?
No, what the fuck's her name? Who plays Golda Meir? What's the Lynn Cohen?
Oh, Lynn Cohen.
Lynn Cohen. She's Golda Meir, Prime Minister of Israel.
Yeah, she's really good in this.
She's great. It's one fantastic scene.
Yeah.
And she's like, we gotta, how are we gonna respond to this, essentially? Because what happened was quickly a lot of the surviving Black September who were arrested members got released because of another hostage situation, the Lufthansa crisis, if you guys know.
Yeah.
So like everyone was mad, and how do we address this as Israel, as Jews, as like people under attack? What are we gonna do?
Going back one step.
Sure.
I do think it's interesting that in the opening recreation, a lot of it is retold through news broadcasts.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
yeah,
not
yeah,
just-
right. There's that as the score is playing and stuff. Yeah.
Not just archival footage, but watching a lot of different people across the world watching the story be covered by different anchors and different outlets.
Right, and there was this thing where like briefly all the reporters thought that it was resolved, that the hostages were okay and that these terrorists were dead, and then they realized like no, they're all gone. There's that. Is it Howard Cosell? Who the hell is it who announced
I think it's Howard Cosell.
Yeah, because he was there for the Olympics.
Right,
That's
right.
why.
And he says they're all gone, and it's. I mean,
it feels
Oh,
weird.
Jim
coming out of
McKay.
his
Jim
mouth.
McKay says. We're all gone.
Yeah. But
Crazy.
It's really interesting.
1972.
Yeah, bizarre footage.
Yeah.
But I also think it immediately frames, people would expect, I think, especially out of Steven Spielberg making a movie out of this subject matter, that he would give you a nice, tidy way to interpret everything that happens.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
Definitely. Here's how you should view it. And especially when it's someone who has been such a big supporter of Israel throughout his life, right?
Sure. I mean, yeah.
I mean,
assume,
we're watching all these different people watch the story be covered in different ways, and it kind of sets you up to think like, okay, we're going to be given the news, the straight facts, that sort of way. And then from then on out, the movie is on the ground floor with people who don't really know what the fuck they're doing and are wrestling with it. And we don't really deal with the media again after the introduction.
No, and I also like that we're focused on one team of this operation,
Yeah.
that they organized to, Operation, what's it called? Sword of Vengeance or something crazy like that. Wrath of God, yeah.
It's a very focused movie. I mean, they're not trying to cover the entirety.
Right, and then only at the end of the movie do we realize, like, right, this was not, like, the whole operation. Right. This is just one team of essentially assassins or, spies, like
toy makers.
Toy makers, Danish antiquity, what's the word for when you decide how much money something costs? Appraisers, yes. Just one team that is is
Kieran
killing...
Hines' shadowy penis. It's just a team, an oddball team of,
and the man attached to it as well. He came along with it.
Oh, right, he's in it. I forgot about that. I forgot that he's in it.
He's so good.
He's so good.
But come on, guys, Lynn Cohen, give it up for Lynn Cohen.
Yeah, great
right?
performance. Great performance.
I do remember that when people first started seeing this. I think it was like David Poland who was like, "Oh, Lynn Cohen, there's your Oscar winner.
Watch out!"
Yeah,
if Lynn Cohen was in 25% of this movie, giving that performance, like, sure, let's talk about it.
It's a very strange call.
It's just the one scene.
Can I throw some real inside baseball for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
If I were a rival studio and there was a front runner who I felt stood in the way of my contender, I would hire David Poland to say that they were going to win. That's the easiest way to knock someone out of the running is for Dave Poland to go, they're going to win.
That's good.
Thank you. Inside baseball, done.
David Poland, though. Thanks.
Shout
out Poland.
Shout out to Poland.
Oh, okay. All right. I already told Todd this. I
Yeah.
forgot to tell you this last week, and again, this is months after the incident. Jeff Wells emailed me.
What?
Isn't that crazy? This is the most
Okay, so context for our listeners, Jeff Wells is a troll who lives under a bridge on the internet and pokes people with a stick and just spouts lunacy.
He's done many terrible things, but by far the weirdest is when he thought he had reserved a hotel room with a hat.
Yeah.
You can go and find that online if you search for it.
Do you not know this story?
Wait, he thought the hotel room came with a hat? Or
Okay,
no.
I got to tell this for one second, because this is the best story of all time. And even
As
if you
I
don't know
find
who the
the
fuck we're
email.
talking about, this story is objectively funny. He looks like he looks like Christopher Walken cosplaying as a vampire, right?
Oh, if I've seen him in real life, he looks like an aging Penny Marshall.
He's a misanthrope. He's a misogynist.
He thinks like we all should be tough guys,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
He's very into like masculinity and
He's the Zen samurai warrior poet. Isn't that his thing he always throws
I
out?
think so, yeah.
The emotionally vivid, right. So he does shit like he'll have a tinfoil wrapped piece of cake that he'll bring to a restaurant, and then he'll ask if they can serve him a plate so he can eat the dessert he brought from home, and then get angry when they tell him he can't bring his own dessert into a fancy restaurant.
Right.
But the story was he was at Sundance, where rooms fill up like super quickly. Far in advance, people have to book their rooms at Sundance because it's not a huge city, and the desirable hotels that are close to where the theaters are hard to come by. He had a hotel room, and when he left and he checked out, he put his cowboy hat on the desk, on the counter, and said, "I'll be back for this next year."
Oh, and he thought that was enough?
A year later, he arrives at Sundance and goes, "Jeff Wells checking in," and they go, "You don't have a room book." And he goes
Did they
online.
have his hat?
Yeah, I think they had to dig through it. They went, "We don't." That was the further insult. Was he went, "Well, what about my hat?" They went, "What fucking hat?" But he went online. He went, "If a man leaves a hat on a counter, it is very clear."
Like Deadwood?
Yes, that's the problem with Jeff Wells is he thinks he's living in Deadwood. He thinks it's constantly a last stand for masculinity, and his small movements speak volumes. But he's a horrible person.
Yeah, he's bad. Anyway, he got mad at me because I mentioned Casey Affleck's legal issues.
Yes.
And he got mad at you
in
for
an
that?
Oscar prediction piece. Just brought up the fact that, this has been coming up.
That it's a fact and it's a case that's been public for fucking 5 or 6 years.
He was sued for sexual
harassing
harassment.
two
He
female
settled out
crew
of
members on his
court,
phone.
and I said something like that could come back to haunt him in the Oscar race or something like that. Anyway, yeah, he said that I was falsely equating his boorish behavior with Nate Parker. How dare I?
Yeah.
And and he's the thing that Affleck's thing, direct quote, was nothing compared to the Parker thing or the Polanski thing. Tedious and unwelcome behavior that he paid to settle.
Yeah,
Does
nice
not
use of the
even
word
approach,
thing.
much less match the agonies and upheavals associated with Parker. this is my way of addressing it, Todd. Because I asked you what to do, and you were like, "Don't email back."
Yeah,
and I was
don't-
like,
Don't email back. Also, you know what? Maybe let's not sit around and rank which sexual
Indeed,
assaults
yes.
are worst or better than others.
I'm just realizing that sometime in March I'm going to get a tweet that's like an aging Penny Marshall. I'm going to be like, what the fuck is that?
He does listen to this show, and he's going to be our guest on the Tintin episode. He also once, and I think more than once, but one time very publicly, emailed James Mangold, director of 3:10 to Yuma,
Yes.
because there was a scene where actress Vanessa Shaw was naked but covered, and he believed that there must be on-set stills of her fully disrobed,
Yeah.
and asked her to just, pass along the stills, which is a thing that maniacs do.
And somehow didn't like kill his career. I mean, he's self-employed,
What
but
is his career?
Yeah,
Exactly, right. He has such an odd career.
but like I don't understand how like he gets
Money?
access, he gets
Yes.
money, like he apparently lives a jet-setting life. So.
I love that we're going this deep into
All right.
Jeff Wells in the middle of
All
a
right.
Munich episode.
That's enough. I'm sorry that I brought it up, and we can cut it if we go too long here. But what I just had to tell you.
No, but that's important for our listeners to know that a cowboy hat is not a binding reservation.
Right.
Not at a restaurant, not at a hotel.
Also comes up in Munich.
Comes up in Munich.
It does. I mean,
Emotionally vivid cowboy hat.
they trace the cowboy hat back to them. That's how they know. So, Eric Bana,
Yes.
the actor Eric Bana, and I was looking through Eric Bana. What a rapid rise and
It's
fall.
weird.
And I got no beef with Eric Bana. I think he's excellent in this movie. I don't know if you guys
I think he's a
agree.
very good actor.
Agree.
Yeah.
But it is funny how this is it. This is the end of Eric Bana as a movie
This was like
star.
third strike. You're at bat. We're giving you 3 to be a leading man. And it was like Hulk.
Hulk in 03.
People
and then
hate that movie.
Troy in 04.
Right, which did really well, but
Did
people
well, but
didn't like it really.
Not well remembered, I guess.
And he certainly didn't really stick in that.
Although I'd say he's pretty good in it.
I think he's pretty good in Hulk too. I think
Yeah.
he's pretty much
He's
good.
pretty-
He's
good in
excellent
all
in
these,
Hulk.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Hulk's a weird movie.
A masterpiece, I think
sure,
is the word.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then Munich, and then after that, Lucky You 2 years later, the other Berlin Girl, which I like Eric Bana, but he's horrible in that movie.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then he's the villain in Star Trek. Oh, well, remember Eric Bana?
And then Funny People that same year, it was like, oh, maybe
And
he's
the
a
Time
character actor
Traveler's
now.
Wife.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then, now he's just kind of floating in. He's not
Around.
gone.
No.
He was in The Finest Hours. He was
And he's-
pretty good there.
and he's
okay.
and Eric Bana.
Not
Yeah, and Eric
bad.
Bana, yeah.
But although he has a Texan accent or something. And
Yeah,
he's sort of
it's
struggling
terrible.
with it.
Yeah.
Everyone's accents in that movie are real fun.
Well, it is a weird arc because he was an Australian comedy star.
Yeah, he was in The Castle, and he had a
Right.
sketch show.
Yeah,
in
he did
Australia.
sketch TV
Yeah.
and sitcoms, and
Yeah.
he was really funny, but he was this conventionally good-looking guy, and he usually was funny upending that,
Yeah.
He kind of was doing a twist on straight man stuff.
Sure.
Then he does Chopper, where he
Chopper,
plays
it's his big breakout.
right,
He plays
Australia's most notorious
He
serial
plays
killer
Australia's
who killed
Bronson.
3 people. Right? I remember Sam Rogal, past guest on this show, always said, that shows you what Australia's like. This is the worst criminal we had. 3 murders. And he's like a live wire in that movie. He gained a bunch of weight.
Yeah, looks great.
And
It's
he
a crazy
plays
movie.
this very charismatic, very terrifying person. It's weird that then everyone shifted to going, oh, this is a conventional leading man.
Well, but you got to remember, then he's in Black Hawk Down, which he's fantastic in, which is more of he's playing a tough, chiseled soldier. He looks great. He's really intense. I love him in that movie.
But that comes off of Chopper.
Yes. No, but then
I remember seeing Black Hawk Down and already knowing at that point he had been cast as
I
the Hulk.
know, but right,
Yeah.
but they see that and they're like, right, this guy's hot. This
Yeah.
guy's handsome.
But yeah, he's really good in Black Hawk Down. He gets the final monologue and he kind of nails it.
It's great. Hoot. He
And
plays
then
Hoot.
yeah, Hulk was
I was trying
supposed
to
to
get
be.
Todd with that one. I got him.
Do you know who was supposed to be Hulk?
Who?
Billy Crudup. Which is why if you look at Ang Lee's Hulk, the Hulk looks like Billy Crudup. I swear to you.
Like a grumpy Billy Crudup.
Yeah, it's got Billy Crudup's face. I swear to you.
Sure.
Eric Bana gets slotted in very last second. Oh wow, this is huge.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like okay, X-Men made Hugh Jackman.
Right.
Spider-Man at the time it felt like Tobey Maguire was now made, and then he didn't really do movies.
No, and he's a weird little Weasley guy,
Right.
so he's never gonna be. Yeah, anyway.
But
go
it
on.
was like here's a new anointment,
sure.
and then people hate that movie.
I hate
Yeah.
that movie.
But Troy was already running, right?
Yeah,
and it's like okay.
Troy makes money, but nobody likes Troy, and then there's this. Yeah.
Right, and this I remember
This is supposed to rebrand him as like a serious.
That was the thing.
Right.
I remember
this
people
is gonna be
being
a
like,
weighty role.
okay, he tried to do 2 summer blockbusters and they didn't really work. But now this is who Eric Bana is. He's an Oscar perennial.
Yeah.
And then you see him in this, and he's really solid in this, but it's not a very showy part.
No.
I mean, his job is just to kind of hold the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an Oscar nomination type part.
No.
This was a year where they had to go out of their way not to nominate him in Best Actor, and they did go out of their way
yeah.
not
Yeah,
to
let me.
Well,
can
this
you
is
guys tell me?
Hoffman, Ledger,
It's Hoffman and Ledger and Phoenix.
Strathern,
And Strathairn, yes.
Yeah.
And then there's the 5th nominee.
and is it Hustle and Flow?
Yeah.
Terrence Howard. And like
Yeah.
they like Strathairn and Terrence Howard, they both were kind of on the outside looking in. And then
I'm very happy for Terrence Howard's
Yeah.
nomination in that movie.
he's great in that movie.
He's terrific in that movie.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. They also didn't nominate Viggo Mortensen. Got a lot of good actors that year who, Keanu Reeves and Constantine. Like, that's
a really good performance. Michael Agnarano in Sky High. I mean, we're talking like these were the guys who were like 6, 7, 8, you know?
Keep going, baby. Nicolas Cage in Lord of War.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Was Weatherman that year?
Oh, maybe.
It might have been.
It was either 05 or 06. I would have nominated Nick Cage and Weatherman, no question.
05. Remember, he had that bow and arrow.
Yeah. I mean, I would have put Christian Bale in Batman Begins for Griffey.
He's
I think that's the one Batman movie where he has a full performance because they give him a real
great
arc.
performance.
He's
Yeah.
amazing in that. Yeah. Anyway, the movie's called Munich. It does not feature Batman.
So Eric Bana plays Abner Kaufman,
Yes.
who is a made-up character, and yet they keep talking about his dad as like a
Yeah.
war hero.
Yeah.
So I guess he's supposed to be burdened by some kind of like patriotic responsibility that he wants to live up to.
Can I just quickly point out that none of the 3 major actors in
Are
this
Jewish?
movie,
I want to say Daniel Craig's Jewish.
he's not. I looked. It
I
up.
know, but I just
double-checked.
want him.
This was one of
Want him for our team.
This was one of 2 Angry Jews Get Vengeance movies that Daniel Craig did.
It's true, and yet
2.
he's a fair-haired, blue-eyed,
blonde Brit.
steely Brit, born in Chester, Britain.
Nothing reads Jewish about him. I had to look it up because I was like,
He's of French Huguenot ancestry. He is not Jewish.
no. I'm not offended by it. Like I'm
No.
not saying that to bring
No,
up a
but,
stink,
like,
but it is a little bit like
10 years earlier, you would have this guy as like the racist in like Gandhi or some kind of African, like he'd play like an Afrikaner, president.
the bratty
who's,
student in school ties or something. Like he looks
Sure.
like the
what do you want to say?
bigoted
Tom?
antagonist.
If you believe the Holy Blood, Holy Grail theory, the Huguenots are descended from Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and Jesus was a Jew.
Jesus was a
So-
Jew.
Jesus was a Jew, but I have
Jesus
a question
was a
for you.
Jew.
Was Mary Magdalene? Because it's
Yes.
through the mother.
It's
All
through
right.
the
She was.
mother.
I think
She was.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Then we're cool.
Fair
I
enough.
think you're correct that she was. Although
Fair
the
enough.
Jews at the time were not happy with her.
Yeah, I just like that they picked like 3 actors, like an Australian, a Brit, and Jeffrey Rush is Australian too, right? 2
Yeah, and
Australians.
Kieran Hins is Irish.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were just like, I don't know, just get guys with weird noses.
No, I mean they get these guys who, I mean, not Daniel Craig, but Kieran Hins, Eric Bana, like they have sort of a Sephardic look, like slightly like a little more of a Mediterranean look, I guess, if
Slightly.
you have their hair darker.
I remember from the time that they were talking about that, like these guys were not necessarily like the real people that these fictional characters are based on were like not necessarily going to be like the Daniel Craig character was fair haired.
Mhm.
Okay,
Like,
all
so
right. So they
that
were
was
trying to
their
match.
out for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I don't care.
But they're all fictional characters anyway. So
They are all fictional. I guess they're like composites, right?
yeah, so they could have just done whatever they want.
But Matthew Kasovitz, I will point out, he is
Yes,
Jewish.
and
Of
he's the
course,
one
he
who
played
reads
a
the
Jew
most
in La
Jewish.
Haine
Yes.
in his breakout role.
Which he directed as well.
Yes. Oh, no, he directed that. He's
Yes.
not in.
No, it's Cassell.
Vincent
is the
Cassell
lead in
is-
that.
right.
Yeah.
Um,
And then he directed Gothica. Don't
yeah.
forget,
Then he
directed
directed Gothica and won the Oscar.
He is unsurprisingly my favorite character in the film.
He's terrific. But so I'll say they assembled this team
Yes.
for Avner, and
Correct.
you've got and it's assembled by Ephraim, who is Jeffrey Rush, who is his sort of
Really
handler,
good in this. Yeah.
who is terrific. What do you think of Jeffrey Rush, Todd?
I'm a Jeffrey Rush fan.
Yeah, me too.
I like him here. I
And
like him here.
let's go a little more background. Eric Bana is kind of a straight arrow guy, but tightly wound. His wife is like 3 months away
He's
from
got a
giving
pregnant
birth.
wife, who he likes to have sex with.
Right.
Yeah.
But also love of country, you
Like-
know.
Likes to have sex with the country too. So,
Yeah, he loves fucking that country sideways while she's pregnant.
Absolutely. So they assemble this team, and it's a South African
Mhm.
driver. I guess Daniel Craig's the Wheels guy, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just sort of your number 2. I guess.
Yeah.
His name is Wheels Hershkowitz in this movie, isn't it?
His name, I think, is like Steve. It's not like really like a Jewish warrior name.
Steve Blonde.
Steve of the Maccabees. Guys, me and Griffin are Jewish.
Yeah.
We can do all this. You've got Matthew Kasovitz. He's a toy maker and a bomb maker, I guess, as a result. Although, I like his performance a lot. This guy is a shitty bomb maker.
Terrible. But
He
that's
makes
what I
like
like
3
about
bombs. One of them works. One of them is too powerful, and one of them blows him up. Like, he's not like a great. Like, they maybe should have like combed Israel a little harder for him.
Okay, what I like about him is the movie acknowledges that, right?
Yeah,
I also think he's kind of in his own inspirational Disney underdog movie, which is like the little bomb maker who could. He just, everything's against him, but he just believes someday he's going to make a great bomb. This is also unquestionably who I would play in this movie, right? Because I always play that game where it's like, okay, who would I play in this movie? I chew that shit up so hard. Little Frenchy Jew toy maker.
Yeah,
that's me. You kidding me?
So who would I play?
Who would you play? You'd play Wheels Hershkowitz.
Yeah, because I'm sort of a fair-haired Jew.
No, I think you'd maybe be Kieran Hines.
Well, Kieran Hines, Carl.
Yeah.
He looks like an accountant, but I mean, I think
Very
the idea
straight.
is that he's a former sort of tough guy, Mossad soldier or something.
Yeah.
Like he's someone who's like got some blood on his hands.
He's a regular Gal Gadot type.
I don't know what that means.
Gal Gadot,
she was
former
in
Mossad
Mossad.
agent.
Which is pretty crazy.
Awesome. I just always like to point out that Wonder Woman has almost definitely killed people.
Jesus.
That's probably.
Then there is Hans, played by I need to look. Hans Zichler.
He's the sort of
he's like
punchy guy.
Yeah, the Danish antiquity guy.
Yeah,
he's great.
He's really good.
Who is that guy?
No idea.
Where the fuck did they find? Yeah, everyone's great. I would say
Yeah.
everyone's great in this movie. But like, I mean, I'm looking up. I mean, he's a German actor. He's in some German stuff. I don't know what to tell you. He's great. I think he's terrific at his,
This is the thing I like about this movie, and the part that's like I think left over from Eric Roth's script is the scene where they're like, "Here's what everybody's job is," and then the movie just utterly just forgets about that. And doesn't care.
This is not a movie that is process oriented.
No.
This is not a movie where we get through osmosis and through some dialogue that like they're going to Matthew Almarique's character, what's his name, Lewis, and like he sells them information and they use this information to, but like it never says like, who are these people they're trying to kill? Who, like, what do they do? Why are they, it's all vague. Like, you would think there would be a script where it would be like, you would maybe be watching someone, then it would cut to a black and white photograph, and then they'd be like looking at the table and they'd be like, there's, the jackal, he killed 8 Israelis in a bomb. Oh, that's why we got to kill him. You
Captain
never do that.
Boomerang, deadly foe of the flag. Like, it feels like you could do the Suicide Squad Amanda Waller explanation for every character in this movie. It's a 2-hour, 45-minute movie. It's not like they didn't have
they
time
have the
to do
time,
it.
right?
But it shows you that's not what he's concerned with.
But so was Eric Roth's script first?
Yeah, he wrote the original script, and then Tony Kushner did Punch Up, which was apparently just like basically a page 1 rewrite, as you can tell. But,
Right, and then
but like
they're both credited.
They kept Roth's structure, so they had to.
But this is a pretty cushy script.
Yeah,
I think we can all agree. And
he never worked with Roth again or before.
Really?
Roth has got a weird career.
Yeah,
because he wrote Forrest Gump, so obviously that's his sort of like eternal calling card. But he also wrote like The Postman and like The Horse Whisperer, like a lot. Eric Roth.
No, I was going, whew. It sounded like who. Yeah.
If you guys do a Eric Roth miniseries, I'm there for every episode.
you want to be in there? You want to be in there
Roth.
for a movie he wrote called Jane's House? Oh no, it was a TV movie.
Well, I was reading,
but he also, of course, wrote like The Insider and Ali. He like worked with Michael Mann a lot. He wrote Benjamin Button.
Well, I was reading an interview with Spielberg because I've just been reading a lot of Spielberg shit recently while doing this podcast. Cruise and Spielberg apparently came close to doing Benjamin Button years earlier.
That would have been weird.
Really weird.
That would have been a weird movie.
But in that period of time where they had been dying to make a movie together,
what a weird
pre-Minority
movie
Report.
that is. Though.
Weird movie.
I love that. I love that movie.
That's a great
love
take.
that movie.
I haven't heard that take in a while.
I like that movie a lot. I think that movie's due for a reevaluation.
Yeah, because I was thinking about the movie and I'm like, I saw it, and I remember that it's about a little old man who turns into a sexy young baby, but I do not remember the movie that well. I was just seeing Hidden Figures, and I was like, oh yeah, remember when Taraji and Mahershala Ali, they were married in Benjamin Button like 8 years ago? Yeah. And now they're flirting again. They're flirting up a storm. In Todd's least favorite movie of 2016,
Really?
Hidden Figures.
It's fine. I don't hate it, but yeah,
I think you kind of hate it.
I'm not as gung ho about it as David, who it's his favorite movie of 2016. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I find
banging the drum.
I find Benjamin Button really interesting because I think people at the time wrote it off as this is failing to be Forrest Gump.
Yes.
Like they were like, this is what it's aiming to do, and it doesn't hit.
Sure.
And I think it's a movie that is not concerned with being emotional.
Yeah,
I think it's a very existential, meditative movie.
I need to rewatch it.
It's David Fincher's Wes Anderson movie.
Right.
That's what
I feel
it
like
is.
people at the time were like, this is an Oscar movie from Fincher. Like, Fincher's usually all fucked up, and like he just, played it safe to get an Oscar nomination. And I think that's
He was just coming
a
off
huge
Zodiac.
misread of David Fincher because he would never be interested in that kind of shit. Yes, he'd just come off as
I think
Zodiac.
Benjamin Button's a very cynical movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about like how sort of inherently doomed this guy is to live alone, right?
Sure.
And I also think it's like pointedly bottled in all of its emotions. I mean, he holds away from all the big scenes, and I also just think like he's so unconcerned for a guy who's so meticulous about thinking through the reality of what happened or recreating things. He's so unconcerned with the logic of the situation that doesn't really make any sense that he's using it in kind of like, an abstract, expressionistic way to get at these ideas of just like a man out of place and out of time.
But was it a better expression of that concept than the fourth season of Mork and Mindy, where their child was played by Jonathan Winters as Mirth?
I mean,
I'm not
I think
sure.
they're about equal. I do. I think they're very similar.
This
they're
is
bosom
why
buddies.
you get Vandiver. This is why you get VDW.
They're bosom buddies, those two things. It's also, I think, that movie is interesting because of how little narrative effect the lead character has.
Yeah.
Like, he just kind of wanders through shit, and rather than Forrest Gump, it's like, but he was at the right place at the right time. It's like, no, this guy just kind of wandered through life, and he never really fit in anywhere.
Yeah.
But guys, what about Munich?
Oh, right, we're talking about Munich.
So he assembles this team. I mean, like you said, and I know we say this on the podcast all the time, the plot is, there's no plot. It's vignette-y. It's very, very vignette-y.
It's a series of,
It's a series of quote-unquote missions, but they're not connected. It's almost nightmarish, this movie, in terms of how it kind of like just barfs out some new scenario that's, always like morally very muddy and confused and like completely isolated from information. Like, we don't know who's this nice. He goes to the nice Italian like shop and he likes the clerk lady and he's buying some sausages. Like, we gotta murder this. He looks like a fucking playwright. He doesn't look like some he's in like a tweed suit. Go on.
No, that's what I was gonna say. You were talking about the lack of sort of exposition explaining who these people are, what they have to do, and that we're just sort of seeing. Structurally, this movie is actually kind of similar to like something like Elephant.
Yeah.
Where it's like this repetitive, like, we're going to see, them understand what they have to do, them doing it, and then sort of processing it afterwards. Yeah. And it's that sort of in a series, but in this kind of, I mean, almost abstract way, because you're not giving that much context. And I think what's interesting about that is you're kind of knowing as much as they would know.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, they had probably briefing a little more information. But it also is like you're forced to look at these people they're about to kill the same way they would in a situation where there's that guilt of like, they seem like a nice guy. This is just a dude in a nice jacket. Like, why would I have to kill this guy?
Right, well, that first scene, the first assassination where it's
the Arabian Nights guy, or is that?
Yes,
no, that's,
yes,
yeah.
With Kasovitz and Bana are pointing the guns at him and they like don't even want to fire, even though they like know it's him.
Yeah.
Right.
And that thing where he's like he's like, no, and he's like trying to push Kasovitz's gun down. He makes all the violence feel very real. Like the bullets, like the gunshots are very loud and kind of jarring and it's like not poppy, not Hollywood, but also it is kind of exciting.
One of my favorite shots in the movie is on the balconies at the hotel.
Oh, yeah.
And it's Bana standing there, and then there's his target, and the next one over, and then there's a couple that's just fucking all the time.
They're
so good.
The classic canoodling couple. Do you think Steven Spielberg at this time was just like, really like, man, everyone's getting laid? Like, he was just really like,
he just got into sex for the first time.
But yeah, there's
so it's kind of shot in wide and deep focus, so you have all these like different little stories playing out in the same shot,
right?
And it's just Bana talking to this guy, and it's like, you're still early in the movie, so you're still like, yeah, these guys are gonna get these terrorists, but like it's every shot even underlines that these are like human beings,
right?
That maybe they were responsible for this horrible atrocity, but like they still probably don't deserve to be blown up in a hotel room
with no trial or no presentation of evidence or anything like that.
Well, and if you had scenes with Jeffrey Rush giving him the dossier and explaining who everyone is and what they did, then you as an audience, because that scene would then have to quickly, because it's a movie and there's a finite amount of time.
You're like, great, I get it. Like,
I get it. This
justice,
guy's bad. I know how
yeah.
to view it.
Right.
I'm not going to have any sympathy for him.
Right.
But in real life, if you were handed a dossier like that, and then you had a little time to think over it, and then you see someone in real
And
life.
then part of your job is like making sure they're them, so you kind of talk to them for a minute, and you're like, oh, you know, what's up, right?
Unless you're a sociopath, you're going to have some feeling of like, are you sure this is the right guy? Are you sure they did it?
Yeah.
They seem decent. And by robbing us of those sort of explanations, the movie forces you to be in the same position that someone like Eric Bana would, which is like looking at the gestures these characters are making, how they're interacting with other people, the little glimpses we get of their lives, and being like, this doesn't seem like someone who needs to be assassinated.
Yeah.
Which makes it all upsetting and kind of terrifying.
Well, and then also that assassination, right, is the bed bomb, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's the one that almost blows up the sexy couple, and they like
Yeah.
they make sure that the sexy couple's okay, and they're all obviously
She can't see,
completely
though. Yeah,
traumatized.
yeah.
She can't see.
He shoots, I feel like he shoots and cuts every sequence of this movie with the same amount of tension.
Mhm.
So you feel as nervous in the scenes where someone does actually end up doing something as the scenes where nothing happens. Like, he's using the language of thrillers and of tension to, like,
Yes.
when you're watching him have the conversation with the guy and the couple there, you don't know if anything's going to happen in that scene because he's been ratcheting it so much consistently that you're like, this might be a misdirect.
Well, and also there's like they suddenly the couple they're so fucking in love with each other
Yeah.
that they like bang into a shutter or something and it makes a noise and it like startles him and
Right.
like, it's such an edgy. I remember I saw
Spielberg's
this.
already doing fake outs on you.
Right,
Yeah.
I saw this in a theater, and I just remember it being this like very jangly,
Yeah.
edgy movie. That's like, the explosions are all very visceral and like not fun explosions.
I don't know that there's a director working who's better at making you feel exactly what he wants you to feel
Yeah.
than Steven Spielberg. And
Yeah.
this movie is just like constant paranoia.
Right, and that's why I guess why he gets hit with manipulative.
Yeah.
But like that's manipulative means that you can like see the strings really easily and you feel manipulated, right? Like, like you're just like, oh, you're just trying to get a rise out of me. And Spielberg's
He's
better than that
effective.
shit. This is no Monster Calls. Yeah, boom, roasted.
Yeah. Is this movie about Steven Spielberg losing his virginity? The more I think about it, it feels like someone who just had sex for the first time and can't stop sharing details about, like, as if they've already had sex. Like, hey, you know what my favorite part of sex is? You know when you're sexing somebody, you're just so excited to join the table and be
And
able to have
also,
those sexing conversations.
well, also when he had sex with someone, he had a feverish image of the 1972 Munich massacre of the Israeli athletes. And
Right.
he was like, I guess that's part of sex. I guess.
He called up Kushner and he was like, can you write a movie about this weird sex dream I had? And he's like, that's a real thing that happened.
So, but we should, as this is unfolding, once in a while, as Bana's character's sleeping, I guess, and this is a bit of a Hollywood storytelling device, but he has these visions of the hostage situation of 1972, which are also very grim and very, and similarly, there's a similarly amateurish quality, like sort of on both ends, which I like that mirroring. Like Bana's team, they're they seem like a bunch of middle managers who've been like given guns and a list of names and like go kill people. And like the hostage, the Black September, the terrorists, they seem like they don't know what they're doing, right? Like half the time they like just sort of like fire their guns wildly because they just know like they're in trouble or like, something has to happen. I don't know. Like it's all very chaotic and they're really scary scenes, the hostage scene.
Can we talk about the safe house section in the middle of the movie?
This is
No.
Todd's favorite. No, you
No.
refuse.
Yeah,
because it's too perfect. You don't want to.
No, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
We can talk about
With Papa, you mean?
No, with when they are at the safe house that Louis has sent them to, and the Palestinians are also there.
Yeah.
And they listen to Al Green's "Let's Stay Together."
They do. No, right. That's a great scene.
Yeah.
The only song that can affect world peace.
Yeah, right. If only like we could have that at the table right now. Just
Yeah.
Al Green. Is he? He's dead.
No, he's not. Al Green's still alive.
He's
The
still
Reverend?
going. He's still going.
I think he's still alive. That conversation he has,
Still going.
smoking,
Yeah.
with the Palestinian guy is so fucking good
It is.
Mhm.
because it's just like, oh, this is like an infinite feedback loop. This is something that can't be untangled. you
And
know?
that's something the movie is reinforcing throughout, which is like again, Bana doesn't know what's happening in the outside world that much,
Yeah.
but we're hearing like, look, you kill these terrorists, more terrorists just sort of pop up, even
Right.
more radical terrorists often, because you're martyring people and you're making this a war and like so the next soldiers are even scarier than the last ones.
So very early in the film, a lot of the time when there's a foreign language and it's not important to the plot, it's not subtitled. But
No
very early
subtitle.
in the film, they go to this lecture from a woman who's talking about in German, I believe.
She's like babbling.
Yeah,
almost.
she's talking about how you need to get beyond concepts of good and evil and
Right.
like see the systems that are oppressing you and all this stuff. It's very Tony Kushner. It's
Right.
like he just randomly dropped in somebody from Angels in America
Yes.
in the middle of this.
And I love
script.
and I love the fact that she's saying that, and I think it's Eric Bana and Matthew Almeric are in meeting in that
Yeah.
scene, right? And they're like, and he's like, "What the fuck is she saying?" He's like, "I don't know. I never know what she's talking about." Like she's like dispensing this sort of almost accidental profundity, and
Yeah. And
they're like,
that's
anyway,
like,
here's $60,000. Like,
yeah, and that like becomes the like lodestone for the movie, like the North Star. Like everything in the movie points toward you need to get beyond seeing good and evil
Right.
and understand that like it's not even like shades of gray. It's like they don't exist. Like you've invented a dialectic that is pointless.
Right.
And if you can't get beyond that, you can't like see anything clearly. And that's sort of what that safe house scene says to me is like they all want home, but like home is this weird concept to
Mhm.
begin with.
Well, those are like the two sort of biggest themes I feel like he keeps on hitting on in like a traditional Spielberg-y way, you know, as like, okay, here's a clear thesis that's running through the movie. This concept of what home is, that
Right.
what drives everyone is just being able to have a home and be safe in your home, which is like one of the three most primal human instincts that we
Yeah.
cannot kick out of our system. No matter how much we develop as a society, everyone just wants to have a home, feel like they own it, feel like they're protected there. And that's, you know, like maybe the most Spielberg-y moment in the movie is when you have Eric Bana looking at the model kitchen in the window
Yeah.
and seeing the reflections of Cassavetes there, which then turns into Matthew Almeric. And it's like this whole thing of like, okay, what is he actually fighting for? Like, what is a home actually, you know? This feels like it's a representation of the kind of kitchen I'd want to live in, but what price does that come at? Literally. I mean, this is the one scene where I think he lays it on a little thick, right?
I like it when Stevie lays it on thick.
I'm not complaining, but it is. He goes blunt here because Almeric goes like, "It's a nice kitchen, but it will cost you," you know, like that kind of
That's
thing.
true. Yeah.
They literally all the subtext becomes text.
Yeah.
But home is the main thing driving all these people, which is very relatable.
Right, and we should say in the safe house scene, they're all pretending to be like, he's like, I'm ETA, like he's pretending to be part of the Basque liberation
Right.
movement, or maybe the Bader Maidhoff, like all of these sort of liberation movements of the era that were about like finding a home for X people.
Right,
Like,
and then I think that's the second big
The
running theme of the
ANC.
movie is like identity and allegiance. Like,
Yeah.
who are you part of? Not who are you as a person, but who are you in relation to what you are united with? Because you have people hiding behind layers and layers and layers of deception, but it's constantly coming under question, like, who are you working for? I told you I'm working for that. No, I know you're working for this, but you think you're working for that. You're actually working for this.
Yeah.
You know, everyone has like bought into, to some degree or another, some kind of community or some kind of, you know, legacy
Yeah.
or some nationalism, some pride, whatever it is, that they feel like they need to represent that or defend that or attack the other. But no one
Omar-
really knows where they stand.
Omar Metwali.
In that sense,
That's
it's
really good.
In that sense, it's interesting that the movie ends in Brooklyn.
Right,
Home-
that's that he's
Yeah.
robbed of his
Home
quote
of-
unquote home.
yeah, home of the movie Brooklyn. Which,
Oh, that's where I recognize it from. I was spending the whole time, I was like, I know I've seen
That
this
was
in a movie
the first.
before.
I mean, this was the first, and Brooklyn was the second.
But it's not only that he is an immigrant now to
Yes.
another country, and it's not only that the United States has always sort of self-conceptualized it as a home for people from everywhere.
And New York especially
And New
has
York
always
especially.
been...
Yes.
But it's also like the United States is a country where often your identity as an American is secondary to your identity as something else. Like
Right.
you are
Yes.
an American, but you're a Jewish American.
You carry
You're
your
an
baggage
African
as an
Yeah,
American.
exactly.
Yes, right. And that comes first before American. That's the
Yeah.
first word in the hyphen, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah, that is really interesting. I just think...
Manola had a line. I want to find it, but we can get back to it. Keep talking.
yeah, it's just... I mean,
Safe house scene's good, but I love that Papa scene.
Yeah,
Papa.
Yeah,
Papa
let's talk
scene's
about
Michael
beautiful.
Lonsdale.
yeah.
That's Michael Lonsdale. I guess, is he the father of Almeric, or is he just?
Yeah, he's. I mean, it's entirely possible they're making it up, but yeah, he claims to be.
They're at least involved together
Yeah, they're
in
involved.
this.
Yeah,
You know, and these are people, and this is another fascinating sort of shade of gray, right? Is like they sell secrets from everyone to everyone. Like there's
Right.
no partisan thinking. There's no like allegiance or patriotism at work. Like they're simply like traffickers of information.
Well, much like Dominic Toretto, his priority is protecting his family.
Right. And you're saying Papa's priority.
Right.
Papa's priority is
if they added Papa to the
Oh,
Fast and the
They
Furious
could.
series,
They could tomorrow.
Lonsdale.
Yeah,
He's still alive. He's 85.
Oh, he'd be perfect.
He'd be perfect.
Yeah.
He'd be
Man.
great. He'd be,
What if it literally he plays Papa and like it's Dom needs some info, and he goes to Papa, and Papa's
Hands
like,
him a Corona.
Yeah, Papa's like carving the fat off of like a rabbit or whatever. You know, he's like he's making some unpasteurized cheese, and he's like, no, Dom, that'd be great. And we realize that these are in a shared universe.
But that is, I mean, Papa doesn't feel an allegiance to country, to religion, to race. Papa's allegiance is to family.
Yeah.
And every time we see him, he's at this massive estate. They keep on talking about how much money he's made. And the point of that money was to be able to support all of these people, to create this sort of commune almost, It feels like he lives in this bubble where it's just great food and all of his family. Right. And the way that we don't know for sure if Almeric is actually some, because we don't know at all if anything they're saying is true.
Yeah.
The family's so big, we don't know how much of it is blood and how much of it's chosen.
Yeah.
But it is the sense of like he chose his people. This is who he's protecting. This is what he stands for.
Sure.
And everyone else in the movie is kind of constantly questioning, where they fit into it. And he's the one guy who's got his feet totally planted. He's also the most even-keeled, calm person in a very jittery movie.
Yeah.
In a movie
Michael
where,
Lonsdale?
Yes.
Yeah.
In a movie where everyone's always on edge, he's the one guy who is just like, I know what I've done.
And,
I've made my deal. I've made my bet.
and make sure to get this fat off of that
yeah,
rabbit.
you gotta get the fat off
So
the
when
rabbit.
he comes back in toward the end and is vaguely threatening,
Yes.
like throws the movie completely off the rails.
Yes.
And like I sort of
In a good way.
I took that scene as him giving him kind of a friendly warning, like, look, Matthew Almeric has sort of sold you guys out, so watch your back.
Yeah,
Also, I'm sending you some unpasteurized cheese, which I would love it if that guy called me right now.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm sending you some cheese.
He does make cheese sound great.
He makes it sound terrific. Hugo Drax. He's Hugo Drax in Moonraker.
Oh,
Just FYI,
right.
guys. He's
Yes.
the villain of Moonraker, Michael
Yeah.
Lonsdale.
Just
Just wanted that said. I want that on
Appreciate
the
it.
record.
thank you, Dave.
Wait, where's Ben?
Producer Ben?
We haven't even introduced Ben this whole episode. We've been so having so much fun talking Munich.
The Ben Deucer?
Ben, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Producer Ben? The poet laureate?
Mm-hmm.
Our finest film critic?
Yeah,
The peeper?
I've been known to look.
Just do the
The
names.
fuckmaster?
Yeah.
Don't
Fart
make them all
detective?
questions.
Part detective.
Dirtbag Benny?
Mm-hmm.
You're not Professor Crispy, right?
No.
Okay. But you have graduated to certain titles over the course of different miniseries?
Yeah.
Okay, can I just run a couple by you and you tell me if they're correct or not?
I will confirm if they are correct. Yes.
Producer Ben Kenobi.
True.
Kylo Ben.
True.
Ben Night Shyamalan.
True.
Ben Sate.
Oh, yeah, true.
Say Bennything.
Dot.
Ailey Benz with a $sign at the end.
Well,
Just call them
of
Ailey
course.
Benz. Yeah. Yeah, those are his names.
Okay.
Great.
also, the goyest goy of all goys.
Yeah, how'd you feel about this big old Jew fest?
It's great. I really can't add very much. Cool action movie. The context with the whole Palestine-Israel thing makes me uncomfortable being on the record talking about it, so I'm not going
You want
to
to
say
take
much.
yourself off the record.
Mm-hmm. I'll throw this out. In espionage movies, it seems like it's like a trope to have a kid almost get killed.
Sure.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
true. That's
Yeah,
true.
we haven't.
It's a good
that's-
scene, though.
yeah.
I don't like it.
Love watching Kieran Hines book it. He has to run around that corner.
Gotta put a hand on top of that fedora so it doesn't fly away.
Yeah,
I'd
gee.
prefer next time a cat or a
Oh,
dog.
like a cat's under threat.
So
You
the
want them
cat,
to save the
cat
cat.
answers the phone.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. Then I would really be upset.
Great
Thank
work there, Griffin.
Meow, meow.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
do you want me to get the cat out of the room?
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
All right,
Thanks,
hold
Ben.
on.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, it's what we needed in the middle of
It
this
is
Munich
interesting.
episode was a good old fashioned bit.
Foley bit.
Yeah.
Ben, immediately jumping to cool action movie does bring up. I think we should acknowledge this. This movie's lasting legacy is kind of the scene in Knocked Up.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah, I
like
was
that's
about to
most
mention
of
the
this
scene in
movie's
Knocked Up.
cultural legacy now. Okay, Ben, just
Ben's
grab by
got
the
the
scruff.
cat.
Grab by the scruff.
He's really committed.
Okay.
Yeah, the scene in Knocked Up, which comes out 2 years later,
Yes.
in which they are at the club and I guess they've all just watched Munich. Or no, maybe they just want to talk
They're
about
just
Munich.
talking about
He
Munich.
says, like, you know what I saw the other day and is a fucking cool movie? Munich. And all of them go like, oh, yeah, Munich.
It's like Jay Baruchel and Jason
Yeah.
Segel and
Right.
whoever
And they're
else.
like, that movie flips the script. The Jews are the one. And then he has the line, like, if any of us get laid tonight, it's because of Eric Bana and Munich.
Yeah, which is a great line. What do you think of this line?
It's a good line. It's a good line. I'm a little dismayed that I love this movie.
That's
I'm a
overshadowed
little
the rest of
dismayed
it.
that this is its legacy and the weird sex scene And occasionally somebody who remembers that it's somehow anti-Israel.
Right. And you should know that Steven Spielberg sent Judd Apatow a framed still from the film Munich, signed because when he saw Nuck.
Yeah. Well, it does feel like the joke of that sequence, and I think why it hit so well, is that the idea of anyone watching Munich and being like, oh, fuck yeah.
Hardcore
Exactly, yeah.
Jews.
Is really funny, because that's not what that movie is. It's not a Jewish revenge fantasy.
Well, no, exactly. I mean, it's sort of it's a complete
it's
undermining of a Jewish revenge
It's to
fantasy,
underline
right?
their man-child status,
Right.
etc. But
Right, yes.
so few people had seen Munich.
No, it's
That
funny.
Like, now it's been cemented.
I think
That is
people
true.
think it is what they think it is in that movie.
Yeah.
Like, the joke at the time was, like, Munich's very austere. If they think this movie is badass and that's leading to them getting laid,
Right.
then they've misread Munich.
Because I would say the most quote-unquote badass scene is when Kieran Hines, I don't know how you say this.
I say Hines.
We've mentioned him so many times on this podcast.
I know.
Mance Raider.
Mance Raider himself.
There we go.
He gets caught and assassinated by this one-shot character, Marie Jose
Croze.
Croze. Who is she?
She's in The Dying Bell and the Butterfly. She's like the main nurse. She's a very, very fine French actress.
Oh, right. She was in the Barbarian Invasion. She's Canadian. She's
I'm a
not
huge
French.
fan of hers. Really? Oh, she's French Canadian?
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of hers. I think she's really good.
So
actor.
she kills poor Kieran. You know, and he gets a nice little goodbye scene actually at the bar with Eric. And so then they exact their revenge with those weird little like flashlight guns that like
So
do the little the poof, and it's a creepy scene, but that's the most badass scene, right? Like that's in another movie. That's when they're taking their like brutal revenge.
But think about how upsetting that scene is, because they walk in, she's there, who are you, what's going on? She sees Bana, she puts it together, right? They take out the things, they start assembling them. She goes, well, at least let me get dressed, you know? Is reaching for the gun. You go, okay, I know where this is going. It's going to be a shootout thing. Then she doesn't get the gun, right?
Yeah.
She does her last-ditch attempt that's like, well, tries to seduce them to see if she can throw them off. It'd be a waste to let these talents, And then they shoot the things, and it's like some weird, it's almost like the cattle stun gun from No Country for Old Men. Like, it immediately leaves this mark, but it doesn't really start bleeding and letting out for a little while.
She starts breathing.
And he starts holding, like you see her with these two large red dots.
And she's like stumbling around, and they're trying to kind of like just get her to sit back down.
She's half-robed. She goes to her cat. She hugs her cat. And they're just like, sit down. And you just have to sit with her, watching her stumble around really uncomfortably, knowing that she's about to die before it starts getting gruesome. And it's like, this isn't a movie that gets any satisfaction of, it'd be so easy to, especially when it's like, a honeypot character like that,
Sure.
Where it's like, oh, her job is to seduce and kill. It'd be so easy to just be like, yeah, you fucking get what you deserve. And I feel like the shittier version of Munich that the knocked up guys think they're watching, that's the kind of scene it would do.
Because, I mean, she's not a character with any dimensionality or, she's just an assassin. We only know her as someone who kills one of the, it's not like there should be sympathy for her, and yet.
Right. To hold on her death that much is just like, death is never cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if someone's done something wrong, if they're on the opposite side.
Yeah.
It's never a pleasant thing to watch. Even, regardless of the viscerality of blood and gore and whatever, it's just like to watch someone in their final moments accept death. And she's like puttering around like a baby. I mean, she's like losing her facilities, and it's just like grabbing a cat. Let me sit in the chair I like,
Yeah.
It sucks. Death blows. I want to go on the record and say that. I think death is fucking lame.
Yeah. Todd?
I think if Eric Bana comes and shoots me, I'm going to hug my cat. I think that's a good way to go.
When Eric Bana comes for us, and he comes for us all, sooner or later, he comes for us all.
Yeah.
He does.
You got to grab your cat and give it a nice little hug.
My cat's name is Pig.
Is it true?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'll be selling Pig Plush in the Blank Check online store.
Oh, I have actually a pitch for you guys.
Oh, sure.
Why don't we just make customized blankets?
Yeah, that's what we should do. We should make like stadium blankets with our faces on them.
For the blankies.
Yeah, that's what we should do.
Blankies.
This store is going to be open any day now.
Blanky
We're
blankies.
working on it. Other thoughts about this movie? I mean, should we talk about the sex scene more?
should.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So they do all this stuff. They kill lots of people. Eventually, Bana, does he retire, or do they retire him?
He's out. They
He's
can't
done.
pull him back in.
They
Yeah.
have one They have one mission that goes kind of wrong, where they're trying to kill this big shot, and instead they kill this teenager, and it's sort of a disaster.
Oh,
so then he's out. He's in Brooklyn, and what is it about?
Griffin, you were on a show where you had to be like set in the 70s.
A vinyl, yeah.
And this is also mostly set in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of the fashion in those days? I dig it.
I do too, and I thought that during the movie, but I thought it wouldn't be cool to bring up on this podcast.
Well, I brought it up for you.
Everyone looks really cool in this movie.
Hell yeah.
It's a really well executed 70s costume world because they don't feel costumey. Everyone feels like it's like real outfits, and they do the thing that the best period films do, which is like the clothes are mostly from like 6 years earlier than the movie was set because fashion like lasts, people are wearing older clothes. I think everyone looks cool in this movie. I think 70s stuff is cool. I think it's a good fucking zone to set stories in.
Sure. I like all the facial hair. I love chops.
Yeah.
Stashes.
But I like Kieran Hines is sort of still like in a 60s mode. He looks like he's like from the Anderson tapes or something. It's like this is an older guy and he's holding on to his prime.
James Bond's haircut is pretty rough.
What the hell is he talking about? Oh, you mean Craig? You mean Daniel Craig?
Yeah,
This is the year before Casino Royale?
Yes.
Casino Royale is 06, yeah.
Right. So he's just about to pop. Daniel
He's
Craig.
just about to become a huge star.
But right now he's still like steely British theater actor Daniel Craig.
And
right?
very much like a supporting player.
Right, like 8th lead in Road to Perdition, Daniel Craig.
I think he's really good in that.
It's terrific in Road to Perdition.
Yeah.
That's a mushroom cut, though.
All right, man, that's enough.
There's a moment in this film when he gets back and he meets the Israeli soldiers who are like escorting him, and they're like in awe of him. Mm-hmm. They're talking to him as if they're the knocked up guys. And they're like, "We know who you are. You're not allowed to say it, but you're fucking cool, right?" And they put out their hand to shake his hand, and he like really hesitantly does it slowly.
Yeah.
And it's so clear this movie's framing it as like this guy isn't some oorah hero.
Yeah.
He's not like the underdog defender. This is a guy who's got to live with this for the rest of his life.
I just remembered that Kieran Hines is who Daniel Craig shoots in Road to Perdition. That's like sets everything off in the movie.
Oh, that's crazy.
Remember that?
And
then Superman sees it.
Yeah.
Little Superman. Tyler Hock.
Yeah.
He's a little Superman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And also Mathieu Amalric is the guy who James Bond punches in Quantum of Solace.
True. That is true. And Michael Lonsdale played the city of Chicago in Road to Perdition.
Yes.
He played the entire city.
Yes.
And Matthew Kasovitz was the rain.
Yeah.
What a great movie.
It's
Road to Perdition.
Yes.
Todd, weigh in.
I like Road to Perdition.
Like
I would not say
it's.
I would not say great, but I like it.
I like it a lot.
My favorite Mendes.
Probably mine too.
What's it? Well, I like Skyfall. Actually.
Skyfall.
Yeah. I like Skyfall, save for that one scene.
Which one scene?
When he just goes into a
when he just
sexual
is like,
abuse survivor shower.
Let me get in the shower with you.
Yeah. We've just talked about how you were like a sex
weird
slave.
scene. That is
When you jump in your
That's
shower.
an objectively odd scene.
That
I feel
scene
like
sucks.
Daniel Craig has talked about that scene like ever since he made it as
Yeah.
like an example of like, why do I play this guy?
Yeah, this guy's
is bizarre.
This guy's gross.
Yeah.
But I mean, the sex scene in this movie is interesting not just because it's so over the top because he's done so few sex scenes in his career, but it's also like the denouement of the film.
Yeah, so right, we're on the sex scene. Yeah. And no, it's and also because it's cross-cutting with the massacre of these poor Israeli athletes. It's an odd choice. It's almost a bold choice, I would say. Right?
Yeah,
Rather than a misfire.
It's
intentional.
There were many defenses of this movie at the time, but of course, it's when there's an obviously weird scene in a movie. Like you think about Spider-Man 3, which has a lot of problems, but all anybody remembers is the scene where he dances.
Right.
And like all anybody remembers about this movie is this one like really tonally strange kind of off the wall choice, which I actually really liked this time around. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like,
I liked it more than I thought. In my head, so I feel like you could cut one shot out and then you'd be fine. And the shot is him orgasming and like just like beads of sweat flying into the air. And now in my head, that was like literally like so much water suddenly and it's not.
It gets into Flashdance territory.
Not that bad, but still, I do feel like maybe I don't know, just do some pickups, right?
In my head, it was 5 minutes long. I think
yes,
back
me
on
too.
it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
But it's not that bad. But, I'll admit that I get that it was jarring for people. And I do think the idea, of course, is that he's 100% traumatized by the violence. And, like, the violence is all sort of it's all blended together for him as well.
And the fact that the movie is kind of bookended by these sex sequences. The one in the beginning of the film is not very erotic, is very just kind of like, this is just a married couple having sex. It's romantic.
She's pantsless, he's nothing
Right.
clothed.
Right, and there's like
That's what we
half
call
a blanket
naked, right?
over them. Yeah, nothing clothed.
Yeah.
But it's very just like, you know, he doesn't do any flashy camera work or anything. It's just watching two people make love who are in love with each other, right?
No, this is moving.
And then the end of the movie, it's like he's having this very visceral, like
A lot of
torrid
thrusting.
sex, you know, shot in this very, very cinematic way, cross-cut with, like, the horrors that he's never going to be able to live down. Like, this is defining him for the rest of his life now.
Well, it's because, you know, at the start he thinks you can be safe and you can have a home. At the end,
Right.
he knows you can never be safe. You can
Right.
never have a home.
Right.
Right. He's sort of in that, he'll always be looking over his shoulder. And also, I think...
He's got this extra charge now that's not going away.
But I also think there's an intention in Spielberg showing the murder of the Israeli hostages, which was so random, like you just see. It's like when Black September terrorists realize that it's all going down, they just sort of fire wildly at the guys. And it's not that different from what you've seen Bana and his crew do,
No.
Yeah.
which
No.
is kind of just fire wildly at people when they think they got, you know, like...
Yeah.
And then there's the factual final scene is his conversation with Ephraim.
Yeah.
On the docks of
He's
Brooklyn.
really good in this.
Which has that very intentional shot of the World Trade Center
Yeah.
Final shot has the World Trade Center.
in the skyline. Yeah,
I do love, that's the thing I love about this
where
movie.
Ephraim is like, "Come back to Israel. We'll kill more people."
fuck are you talking
And
about? I
Eric
hated
Bana's
that
like,
stuff.
"Why did we do this? Did it work?" And he's like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
I
why
think
not?
so.
Sure.
Always more people to kill, though."
Flip a coin.
But I mean, I'm making it sound silly. It's a scene where both characters have staked out their sort of philosophical territory on this.
And the movie ends in a note where it's like these two guys are going to walk in two different directions and shit's going to keep happening. Like, there's no, you know, was it a success? Like, in the immediate, they accomplished the thing they were trying to do. But, like, it, you know, nothing's resolved really in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
I love how, and this is like because it's like a $60 million Spielberg movie and he can do whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like the period
70
setting,
was the budget.
70, wow.
Mhm.
In terms of the period setting and how many different locations this film has, the world of this movie is so huge because he does a lot of wide shots. He does a lot of long tracking shots where you're going across city blocks, and the degree to which they had to set dress, like every car, every outfit, all the signage and everything.
Mhm.
He makes the world feel very just sort of lived in and offhand. That's the thing in this movie that kind of reminds me of The Conversation, is a lot of times he uses more sort of like documentary film techniques. He does a lot of zooms in this, which Spielberg doesn't usually do.
Mm.
He usually moves the camera, not shifts the lens,
Right.
you know? And he does a lot of like quick zooms into people from a distance, this sort of paranoid kind of bird's eye view or like a, you know, bird's nest view of characters talking.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an uneasy movie.
I think it's great.
I think it's really good. I don't think it's great, but I really, really like it.
Oh, you don't think it's great? I think it's great. This would be in
It's-
my top 10 of the year for sure.
It's top 5 Spielberg for me.
I do think there's something, though, to what you were saying about it, like the Spider-Man 3 comparison, where when audiences have a very specific idea of what they want out of a movie, and it doesn't work for them, they always latch on to, like, the thumb sticking out the furthest, you know?
Sure.
Where it's like, I think the weird scene in Spider-Man 3, the dance shit, all those weird scenes aren't the problem with Spider-Man 3.
No.
It's the rest of it.
Yeah.
That stuff's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
there's-
taking bold swings there.
Interesting is too strong.
I think-
you
I
guys
think some
like
of that
that
stuff's
movie more
interesting.
than I do.
I think the basic functional Spider-Man stuff in Spider-Man 3 is totally dysfunctional, is where that movie
It's
falls apart.
It's kind of all over the place.
And I think similarly, like most of Munich is so kind of locked down and focused that people who I think were looking for the film to give them any sort of emotional catharsis or the sort of rush of an action thriller or the kind of neat answers that they wanted out of like a movie on a hot button issue were able to, especially because it's the end, go, well, that scene was weird. That's the fucking problem.
Yeah.
And pin way too much on the sex scene because it's the loudest thing in the movie.
I think of his 2000s work, though, this and AI have sort of grown the most
Mhm.
in reputation
I agree.
over time.
Yeah.
I think that a big part of why this movie kind of rubbed people the wrong way was when it came out. Like, 2005, certainly we were starting to explore the moral questions of what the United States did after September 11th, but we weren't like all the way there yet.
Right.
And a lot of the reviews, I went back and looked at them, a lot of the commentary was saying, is this movie saying taking action against terrorists makes you a terrorist? Because that's wrong.
Yeah, they're
Like,
right.
That's not what this movie's saying at all, but like that's an easy superficial reading of it. it's kind of similar to what happened to Zero Dark 30 in a lot of ways.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Very
Very,
true.
very similar.
Another good movie.
And some of the
It's also very long.
yes, some of the same sort of like themes that come up in Minority Report, where
Yeah.
it's like, look, it's like two wrong answers, really.
Yeah.
You have to choose which wrong you want to go with.
Right. Yeah.
You know, either you invade people's privacies in order to stop crime,
Mhm.
or you give people freedom and you let more crime happen.
This movie is ranked 29th in the box office mojo category of Travelogue Middle East. You know what number 1 is? Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
Yeah. Let's
Real-
maybe
a great Middle Eastern travelogue.
let's maybe take another sweep of that
You know
category.
what? You know what number 2 is? The Passion of the Christ.
Jesus, what the fuck? Oh, I knocked over a little bit of tea.
Thank you. Great job. I love obscure box office mojo. Every movie is American Sniper, Aladdin.
Jeez.
Why would you call this travelogue? Anyway, that is my way of setting up the box office.
Yes. Okay. Great.
Yay.
So
This-
this opened in like
Christmas.
It was
opened
it Christmas weekend?
23rd of December, 2005. It opened at number 10 at the box office with $6 million, so it's not in our top 5. It opened 530 screens, so like sort of semi-limited. I think
Right.
it expanded out, but, you know, it ended
It's
with
sort of-
47 domestic,
It didn't really
130 worldwide.
pop
you know.
anymore. I feel like its first wide weekend it did the same amount, right?
Let's see, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, its biggest weekend is $7 million.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Christmas 2005.
Christmas 2005. Number 1, it's in its second week of release.
Okay.
Todd loved this movie at the time, I remember.
I rewatched it last year,
He
and
knows.
it's still really like it. I wouldn't
I-
say I love it anymore.
I think I might side with you on this. I haven't rewatched it in a while, but I certainly
So everyone knows what the movie is.
bang the
clearly.
drum highly for King Kong, right?
It's
Yeah.
King Kong,
Which
a
I-
film I don't like.
Okay, I was fully in the masterpiece boat at the time of its release.
It's overstuffed, but the stuff that works is so good.
I think it's incredible. I also would have given Naomi Watts Best Actress. that
She's,
year.
I think she's terrific in
I
the
think
film.
that's an incredible
One day
performance.
we'll do our Peter Jackson
Yeah,
miniseries,
we'll do it.
and then I'll rewatch King Kong.
I can't wait. But that holiday season was an arms race. King Kong was expected to be the movie of the
Yep.
year,
And it
not
made,
just of the
it
fall.
made plenty of money. It made
But-
$218.
But another film sort of lapped it. I mean, came on strong.
Yeah.
And I think the weekend after this weekend returned to number 1 after ceding to King Kong for a couple weeks, and that is
you are correct.
The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe,
That's right.
which ended up being the bigger sort of fantasy family event
Yeah.
film of the
Remember
fall.
when the director of Shrek made a Narnia movie with Tilda
Yeah.
Swinton that was a huge hit?
Do you remember when the director of Shrek had the most consistent box office track record of anyone in history?
Yeah, because Shrek 2, Narnia is 1 and 2,
Right.
and then Mr. Pip.
Okay, so,
Never heard of this movie.
so that's 1 and 2. And he also did a,
Mr. Pip made $1,700 at the box office.
he also
Just
did a,
FYI.
he also did a Cirque du Soleil documentary, I
He
think.
did. He did.
Okay, so that's King Kong and Chronicles of Narnia 1 and 2, right?
That's 1 and 2, correct.
Okay. Number 3.
Number 3 is a comedy that actually opened pretty good. It opened $29 million. This is its first weekend, considering that no one has ever seen it
I know what this is.
and it doesn't exist.
Fun with Dick and Jane?
That's correct.
Hey.
You guys both are. Todd should
My
play the box office
wife
game every
worked
week.
in a movie theater at this time, so I
Mm.
remember
Okay.
because I was there visiting her all the time and seeing free movies, so I remember like everything.
Yeah, that's one of the quietest 100 million grossers ever.
Yeah, the movie made $110 million, 202 worldwide. It was co-written by Judd Apatow and Nick Stoller.
Yeah, and Dean
Starred-
Parasol directed it.
Yeah,
who
starred
did,
Jim
Galaxy
Carrey.
Quest.
Did
Yeah.
Carrey. It was ostensibly also it was 2005, and it's kind of a movie about like
Financial collapse.
white collar crime. It was like
Yeah.
weirdly prescient. Too bad no one's ever seen it, and I haven't seen it, and it doesn't exist.
I saw it in theaters. It doesn't really exist.
Because isn't the button joke on that one the final joke is that he got a new job and he'll be fine, and the job's at Enron.
Yes, it
Yeah.
turns out to be a period piece. That's the big twist. Okay, go. Fuck.
Just like
Congratulations.
Remember Me.
Yeah,
It's
yes.
just like Remember
It's
Me.
very
Right.
similar
It
to
turns
Remember Me.
out that an early aughts crisis is the twist ending of the movie. Now,
Yes,
number 4 is a sequel.
much like Ghost of the Abyss.
Much like Ghost of the Abyss.
Yeah. I had to make that joke. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
of course. Number 4 is a sequel.
Okay.
To a family film.
Cheaper by the dozen too.
There you go. Open to $20 million. For Cheaper by the Dozen too.
Yeah.
Is Tom Welling in that one as well?
Yeah.
Hillary Duff,
I
Yeah.
believe so. Yeah.
Piper Perabo.
Piper. They're all back.
They're all back. The whole family's back. Plus a new family, Eugene Levy and Carmen Electra. That couple. That couple.
There's some episode back in the archives where we rant on like a 20-minute Eugene Levy rant. I
Yeah.
can't remember which one.
What Jim's dad? We talked about Jim's dad.
We talked
specifically.
about Eugene Levy's sort of mid-2000s dominance of the sex comedy genre.
Cheaper by the Dozen 2 features Taylor Lautner playing the child of Carmen Electra and Eugene Levy, the biological child of Carmen Electra and Eugene Levy.
Oh, God.
So live with that, America.
Yeah. And then number 5 is a film that just added, it was limited last week. It just added 1,500 screens and made $10 million.
Was it an Oscar player?
It's an Oscar player that won some Oscars.
Brokeback?
Nope, but did not, was not good. And did not get good reviews. But
Syriana?
No. Good guess.
Right?
Good
That
guess.
fits the description pretty well.
Syriana was that year people were like, oh, no, this'll be a player. Syriana,
Yeah.
watch out for
That was
Syriana.
also an Ebert favorite, Syriana.
That is a movie that I saw. I don't remember it at all, but like
I saw that
what a
Thanksgiving
weird-
night, 2005, with my
And?
wife. We drove to L.A. to see Syriana to celebrate the holiday. Ate at a KFC.
and you lived in
Yeah.
Nevada at the time. No, you drove through the night to
Yeah.
see Syriana. And what did you think of Syriana?
I don't remember a goddamn thing
What
about
the
it.
fuck is that movie even
The
about?
only thing I remember is the GIF of George Clooney walking away from the car that blows up, which
right,
you sometimes
right,
see.
Right.
Yeah.
He dies, right? There's this scene where he's like in a Humvee and he's like, no, don't do it. Then they all blow up. And I don't remember why.
He won an Oscar for it.
It's
He
so
won an
weird that he won
Academy
for that.
Award.
I mean,
It's his only Oscar.
It was his year because that was like Good Night and Good Luck, and then he got like nominated in like 5 different categories.
But I mean,
Before the movie came out, it was like, oh, he grew a beard and he
That's a
gained weight.
triptych with him, Matt Damon, and Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah.
I could point a gun at Stephen Gaghan, who I believe wrote and directed that film.
Correct.
He couldn't tell me what the Jeffrey Wright arc was about. I mean, it's so weird.
I have a theory that 75% of the people who voted for George Clooney didn't see Syriana.
They were just like, yeah, sure. Was
It's
he was
Clooney's
fat or
year.
something? Great.
Yeah, it's Clooney's year.
Anyway, no, it's not Syriana.
Okay, it's not Brokeback. It won a couple Oscars.
I think it won 3.
Last King of Scotland? No, that was the year later. Okay, wait, that year, Walk the Line. Give me another hint.
No, it's bad. It's a bad movie.
It's a bad movie and it won a couple Oscars.
I think it won 3. Do you know the movie, Todd?
I'm not placing it. No.
Look, it's crazy that this movie exists. It was criticized at the time for
I
its
know what you're talking
racist
about now.
casting.
I know what you're talking about
Memoirs
now.
of a Geisha.
Correct. Memoirs of a Geisha.
So,
A
yeah.
Rob Marshall joint.
This was thought to be an Oscar front runner.
Yeah.
And I think it was the Hollywood was like, what should we give to Rob Marshall? You know, he made Chicago. We should give him something kind of musically, right? I don't know. You know, like really
Memoirs of a
complex
Geisha?
period drama
Yeah.
set in is it that it's set in China and featured Japanese actors or the other way around? Like it had this problem where it
It
cast
was set in
like
Japan and featured Chinese.
Right, it cast, like,
actors.
Korean.
quote,
It was everyone
Asian
but
actors,
Japan.
right?
Yeah, it was a catch-all Asian actor pool for a very Japanese movie.
Yeah, because they were like, let's just Watanabe, get him on the phone. Zhang Ji, like, get him
Yeah.
get him in,
Gong
right?
Li.
Right, Gong Li's in it. Yeah.
I think Michelle Yeoh's in it. Am I wrong about that? I feel like she has a supporting part. I haven't seen it since it came out.
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
But I believe it won 3 Oscars: cinematography, art
Well, my girl
direction,
Colleen Atwood won for
and
costume.
costumes.
Yeah. That also is a movie that Spielberg was going to make for years.
Yes. Yeah.
He bought the rights. He had it set up at DreamWorks.
That
He was
was-
always going to make
That
it.
was a hot book club.
Yeah.
Franchise.
And that was another thing when people were doing the Oscar prognosticating months out. I remember people being like, it's going to be Memoirs versus Munich. It's going to be the irony. If Steve got beaten by the movie that he almost directed and finally handed off to Rob Marshall, our next great American director, our newly anointed.
So, some other movies. Good job, guys. Family Stone is in there, which is a film that people now claim is good, which I hate because it's bad.
It's got some moments.
No.
Moments, though.
Todd.
I like Family Stone.
Ugh.
Hey, Todd.
Terrible movie.
It definitely has some moments.
Remember that scene where I don't even want to talk about it. The Ringer?
Rachel McAdams, though.
The Ringer. Imagine that movie coming out today.
Yeah, people would
I
not like it.
mean, people didn't like it then, but imagine that now.
Yeah.
And I think I've never seen it, but I think it sort of criticizes Johnny Knoxville for pretending to be like mentally disabled or
So
whatever
he
the
can
hell it
compete in
is.
the
he's
Special
do-
Olympics. Yeah.
But rumor has it, everybody fucks Costner.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
That was the working title for that movie.
I think that's a Nathan Rabin joke that I dug up from the recesses of my brain. Goblet of Fire is
Yeah,
in there. The
okay.
worst Harry Potter movie.
I would agree.
At least, I mean, if you're giving Chris Columbus's movie kind of like you're just sort of ignoring them, I guess.
Oh, I keeping them in mind still think that's the worst one.
Then Munich, Wolf Creek. Remember Wolf
Oh,
Creek?
jeez.
Syriana, The Producers. Lots and lots of movies in 2005 that were going to be Oscar players didn't. That's the,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
thing. Movies like The Producer.
That's
movies like
fascinating because
Producers,
you could have
Syriana.
gone like if you asked, I'm sure if you trekked through those boards, right, and found like the August predictions, they would have
Yeah.
been like Best Picture, Producers, Memoirs of a Geisha, Syriana, Munich's gonna win in a sweep.
Right. Yeah. Mrs. Henderson Presents.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Remember when she presented a nude
Yeah.
review?
Transamerica's probably in there somewhere.
Oh, jeez, Transamerica.
Another movie, like, release that today. Oh, sure. Let's see how that goes. Whew. The IMAX reissue of The Polar Express.
Yeah, that was
Good-
that period
good
of
year
time
for
where
cinema.
Polar Express would make another $10 to $15 million every year.
Yeah. They just bring it back.
Jeez,
Uh,
dock into the
All
station.
right.
and
So, but that's it.
that's it. Well, much like the film Munich, we're left with a lot of questions and in general unease. Thank you so much for being here, Todd.
I was glad to be here.
People can follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter's TVOTI. You can find my work at vox.com. Or, just follow me on Twitter. I link to it.
Do it. Follow him on
Tavoti.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Tavoti.
Tovoti.
Do you ever regret it being Tavoti? Because I feel like Tavoti now, you just made that your brand.
I don't, because Todd Vanderwerf is such a long, stupid name. People wouldn't know how to spell it. TVOTI. That's easy. It's easy to
That's
remember.
pretty good.
TVOT.
There's a guy who's TVOT who gets a lot of tweets from me, and he
Mhm.
just tirelessly is like, I think you mean TVOTI. He's from like England or something.
Why not just do something else? God. There's this, I'm David L. Sims on
Right.
Twitter. Plug for me. There's a David Sims.
Yeah.
And like he tweets never.
Yeah.
And in his profile, it says, I'm not the TV reviewer or the fashion photographer, because there's also a fashion photographer
Right.
by my name. This poor guy's probably just getting tagged like once every few hours, like with some, great job shooting Miley Cyrus, this week's Interview magazine.
There's a dude who's also named Griffin Newman who lives in New York and works for like Swiss banking. He works for like Credit Suisse.
And
I
they
think.
loved him in The Tick?
Every once in a while, he'll send me something. He'll be like, "Hey, I think this offer to star in a web video's for you."
All right. Anyway, good times. Thank you, Todd.
You're welcome.
God, how long have we known each other, Todd? 15 years?
Yeah, probably.
About
It's
that?
it's been since like 2002, 2003.
Since that
somewhere in
Chicago
there.
Oscar race.
Yeah, I think so. And
Trendy
you were like
sports.
a tiny baby.
I
at the
was.
time.
I was a tiny upstart baby who
And
just
I
got
was-
a computer in his room.
I was still married.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank
To
you.
you and Livy. You're still married today.
Yeah. Congratulations
and I've
to all
I've
of
grown
us.
into a big baby.
Yeah, I'm a little too big if you ask me.
Yeah, pretty big.
A very tall man. That's a throwback.
Very tall man.
Anyway, thank you for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe.
Mhm.
Spielberg does another one of his classics, 3 and 2, and then takes a couple years off. And next week we'll be discussing it is his immediate follow-up to this,
Crystal Skull.
is a film called Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I think is the first film in an aborted Indiana Jones franchise.
We're not doing that.
I love that movie.
You love that movie?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I like parts of it, but
I think there's some good parts. I think that's a movie that also falls prey to the Spider-Man 3 problem.
Yeah.
People focus on the wrong things.
They do.
But we'll talk about that next week.
That's right.
But in the meantime, thank you for listening.
Mhm.
And as always, a big congratulations to Steven Spielberg for losing his weekend.
This has been a UCB comedy production. Check out our other shows on the UCB Comedy Podcast Network.